Hello and welcome to another Office Hours capsule. That's right, capsule. This is a small segment of my Office Hours live stream that's streamed live on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. No, that's Captain's Table. 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Come join us live on Thursdays where we talk about lore, the latest news, random stuff at times. You can see here that this is chat. Chat will say hi. I won't try not to refer to them as much during this stuff, but come join us live and ask your own questions and interact with the folks who are here. Love to have you come by. Again, Thursdays, twitch.tv/theastropub or youtube.com/theastropublive. That being said, let's get started on today's focus, which is the Squadron 42 monthly report. For those of you who have never seen this before, this is where I go through the entirety of the monthly report by CIG to give us the updates for Squadron 42. This happens every month. I've been doing them quite frequently, and people seem to enjoy them. So this is not a summary, as you could probably tell by the length. This is the entire word-for-word description, which is written by CIG to give you the best idea of what's going on. Nothing wrong with summaries. It's just to be so you understand, summaries tend to leave out information that the summarizer does not believe is important. And the reason why that happens is just the necessity. Some stuff they just kind of throw away. However, that will lack some context for things that are going on. So I feel it's important that you read it yourself if you can to, which the link will be down below. But if you can't, you can always listen to me while you're doing your yard work, your chores, or at work, whatever. It's just kind of like a little background information. I will be commenting here and there on things that I know about, that that have been referenced in the past to give you some more context for things. But generally speaking, this will be word for word. And as always, if you enjoy this, if you like this kind of content, make sure that you are liking the video, you're subscribed, and you're hitting the little bell icon, because that's why you know when these are released. That being said, let's get started with the February 2023 Squadron 42 monthly report. All right. AI content. Following up from their recent work of enabling characters to drink in usables, the AI content team began setting up characters to use the Mobiglass at a variety of seats and tables. This is actually simpler than drinking and allowed us to get some great results in a short space of time. AI content. They also completed a large amount of animation polish, including a medic inspecting a patient, exiting beds from different directions and heights, and sitting on the floor feeling sick. On the design side, the team enabled utility characters to load boxes onto a trolley, move the trolley, and then unload the boxes to add additional life to large areas. They also began populating Chapter 15 with AI characters in a variety of locations. For this, they utilized new technology to simplify the process and give them more control, the first pass of which is looking promising. Alongside this, the bridge crew behavior in Shubin Station was refined, and a first pass setup for an interactive weapon rack was completed. A lot of stuff with AI, like details. The fact that they're just now populating Chapter 15 with AI characters tells me that AI may be a little bit further behind than some of the other departments when it comes to Squadron, but it's hard to tell. Because the other thing to remember is you can also look at the progress reports. Shiny Tracker, Magneto Shiny Hobo is a great example, a great kind of tool. There's a lot of updated for dates for the different chapters, though a lot of them didn't move a bunch. Some of them did move, back to like June in terms of their current work on stuff, including, I believe, Chapter 15. AI features. Last month, the AI features team finished work on non-humanoid creature AI. This involved increasing the range of animations that the creature can use, including slow walk that allows for the creature to stalk its prey, and look poses that allow the creature to turn its head to face the target. This is something they've been doing for the several weeks now. Improvements were also made to the code that distribute the creatures around a target when they attack in groups. This uses the formation system currently used by Spaceship AI. When moving towards the target, it checks for and creates a formation around the target. with offsets designed to space the attacks equally. This implementation is currently with the designers for feedback before final adjustments are made. Very cool. AI features continued with medic behaviors, which allowed for the enemy to revive friends downed. Or AI features continued with medic behaviors, which allows the enemy AI to revive friends. Downed AI are those that have taken near fatal damage and can only be revived using the med pen. Unconscious AI are those who have been knocked out, e.g. by a stealth takedown, and can be revived by any friendly. Recent work saw the team tidying up the different interactions and, in particular, focusing on what the AI does when encountering a downed or unconscious AI during combat. For example, if the AI is a medic, they will respond and revive their friend, regardless of condition. However, if they're not a medic, they will call for one and nearby will come to their aid. Very cool. That's kind of an expansion on the system that they showed with the searching behavior back in CitizenCon. Development of Buddy AI mentioned last month continued too. This now includes matching the player's stance, for example, crouch, and moving between cover when enemies are near. Buddy AI is designed for things like escort missions and those sorts of things. And moving between cover when enemies are near. On the animation side, the team prepared for and shot additional performance capture to replace various blockout animations. Finally, for AI features, the team prepared for and shot additional performance capture to replace various blockout features. Finally, for AI features, the team spent time re-reviewing their existing features to check that everything worked as expected as a whole. This led to them testing and fixing issues that could only be seen when all the functionality was working together. AI Tech. AI Tech began February by completing the NPC transit feature, which manages elevators and trains. Now NPCs will understand if the transit carriage is present at their location and whether they can move directly inside, if they need to wait, or if they should press a button to call it. They will also understand when they arrived at their destination and will move outside. While in the carriage, NPCs will look for a usable and idle there until they reach their destination. Upon completion, the feature was passed to design, allowing which AI Tech addressed feedbacks and bugs. The team then allocated time to improving NPC trolley usage, ensuring that NPCs can use the elevators and move trolleys with them if the behavior requests it. To achieve this, they had to write new and update existing behaviors and fix bugs related to path following while pushing a trolley. This is all stuff that was in Star Citizen's monthly report. A lot of the tech stuff tends to be. The team also finished a base skeleton for Boids, birdoid objects, which will enable groups of small creatures like birds, fish, and rats. This required them to implement new components, including a system that allows for designers to write rules and constraints related to spawning and movement, which were exposed to DataForge for easy access. On the navigation side, AI Tech continued to work on coast area shapes that will influence the topography of navigation mesh triangles. This will enable the Pathfinder to avoid or prefer to use specific areas. As mentioned in last month's report, this will initially be used to avoid fire hazards and define sidewalks for social AI actors. The team also progressed with navigation type override parameters, which were used in creating areas with specific navigation constraints. For example, they enable NPC to transition from standing to a regular space to crouching an event. AI Tech also exposed new parameters to specify entry parameters using the navigation phase. Now, the designers will be able to mark entries as included, the default value, this entity processed during voxelization and nav meshes generated using that object, excluded, one entity will be ignored during generation for the navigation system. It will be the equivalent of not having found that object. Ignoring walkability, the entity will cause the nav mesh to consider it as an obstacle. NPCs will not be able to walk on top of the object. For AI tools, the team progressed with their work on Apollo, the subsumption tool, and added new functionality requested by the designers, including master graph editing, to allow users to select the default state of each parent state, the ability to create new multi-graph nodes by dragging functions from the outlier, support for comments inside of XMLs. This was an engine-wide improvement. support to read object container information included in platform creation directly from the P4K files. They also fixed several issues relating to resizing of the node graph view. The work continued on the usable coordinator tool, with the team adding support for multiple input types that can better specify when choosing the next usable or usable group. For example, specifying the number of usables required to determine that the group is complete. They also fixed an issue preventing usable group coordinator from working correctly with object containers, and implemented the ability to add multiple instances to the same usable with different properties. A lot of that is just be able to use things, to go things, to pick things up. It's all just tech sides of things. The birdoid stuff we already saw in Star Citizen, but cool stuff to add that, as well as the ability to navigate around obstacles or just figure out what an obstacle is. AI vehicle features. Vehicle Features embedded AI team continued working on the new AI combat behaviors. We had a lot of back and forth with the design teams and directors to nail down behavior tactics that we're happy with, and we are now working to implement and test this new combat AI vehicles features. Additionally, the new control surface feature for the vehicle flight system is being integrated with AI. Adjustments are being made to the AI movement system to enable them to fly correctly and reliably with control surfaces rather than thrusters. Cool. Animation. Throughout February, the Squadron 42 animation team worked on various features, including their first creature enemy, Vanduul searching actions and threatens, ammo looting, and AI healing. They also worked on pro-style takedowns based on recent unskilled versions. Some design changes were made, and the responses to failed attacks were blocked out. Background AI was developed for stick characters, medical wards, or sick characters, developed for sick characters, medical wards, and emergency exits from object use. The team also worked on the Castek Arms sniper rifle and began reviewing for the first pass of the Titan animation rig. Zero-G grenade used for the player was also developed alongside further zero-G traversal movement. So, Titan is a reference to Titan armor, Titan Suits, which has long been rumored to be a major portion of Squadron 42's main story. So the fact that they're doing the first pass of the Titan animation rig means that it's starting to come together, obviously to be used by not NPCs. It's very different from normal movement stuff. And the Castek Arms sniper rifle, it's new things for that. Various mocaps data was captured, including a crowd watching a fight, numerous walk styles, use of hygiene cubicles, movement and stacking boxes, security weapon racks, and improved threat reactions for civilians. Facial animation team worked on the lines for enemies in Asiato and captured facial forms and locomotion performances for injured and sick characters. There's a lot of mentions of sick characters, which is interesting, and injured characters in this one. But also for the threat reactions to civilians. They talked about that last month where they worked on a lot of cower animations and panic animations for civilians who are encountering people with weapons in a combat situation. Art characters. February saw the character art team continue to work on the Screaming Galsons faction, including a set of cybernetic arms that the team are excited to implement. Yes! We're getting more cybernetic stuff. They're currently progressing with the high poly stages for the Navy pilot flight suit and other Navy assets. Work began on the OMC faction and the model for the enemy creature mentioned above. Interesting, we're getting art for the OMC faction. I'd figured that would be a lot sooner, though it may just be using placeholders for now. The Screaming Galsons, I believe, is a shipjacker faction, so that may be an earlier combat faction you have to deal with, along with Vanduul. And the OMC may be more of a backseat faction. Hard to tell, because we do know that the OMC does have a large portion of the game in the middle, which is where the vertical slice was from. So, interesting to see what goes on there. Engine. All right. So this is where I explained that I am not a Starfleet engineer. I cannot turn rocks into replicators. I do not know the canticles of the Omnissiah. I do not know the will of the machine spirit. And I can't disassemble. I'm not a Halo engineer or not a Forerunner engineer. I can't disassemble and reassemble electric cars by rote memory. I am but me, and I am but stupid stupid man who read thing. So if you do understand the engine speak, the language that these folks speak, please let me know in the comments below. As always, like to hear, and especially to help out those people who may also not know what engine is talking about, what engine doing, but may want to know a little bit more about what this means. So in February, the physics team made several improvements to box pruning. For example, changes were made to avoid bipartite box pruning inefficiencies, to decide when to run box pruning before OBB pruning, and to significantly improve box pruning performance in general. Additional optimizations included using the spaceship's local space OBB for IFCS collision warning sweep checks to reduce the size of checked volume. Furthermore, support for various unary and binary distance field options was added to the physics system to allow for support for tapered capsules, aka biospheres, on articulated entities. Lastly, huge pages are now used for physical entry factories. They're talking about huge pages in the past as kind of changeover stuff. A lot of this seems like it's physics stuff. They've been working a lot on physics specifically to reduce the footprint of physics overall on the game. So, on the renderer, Gen 12 received motion vector support for render-to-texture pipelines. Also, redundant copying of render target data for partial refractions was eliminated. Moreover, the team spent time improving ultra-wide screen support. As one of the results, rendering in the in-game console was vastly improved, resulting in a clearer text display. Improving the visor for ultra-wide screens is still being worked on. Lastly, the CPU side code for scatter queries was optimized. For the core engine, further substantial improvements and performance optimizations were implemented for the remote shader compiler server. Working on streaming system improvements started, and the final touches on P4K version 2 support for internal development tools were being wrapped up. The team also started looking into more advanced tool support for memory tracking of both server and client. So Gen 12, as we know, is basically done. We're just gonna wait for I'll say Virgil, but that's the wrong one. Virgil's been in my brain. The Vulkan integration, API integration into the game to see more of improvements there. But we also see optimizations for shader compilers and other things like that. So, features gameplay. Now, this is where I explained that the gameplay features team actually works in several different levels. You have CIG breaks it up into 3 separate levels. You have social, dogfighting or space combat, and FPS combat. Those 3 separate gameplay features, they work on different levels. So you'll see like, oh, social teams did this, gameplay FPS team did this, and the dogfighting team did this, or the space combat team did this. None of those are necessarily exclusive. It's just certain sections of the game heavily focus on them, and so they may bleed into one another. Last month, gameplay features continued working on the save and load, getting the subsumption missions restoring correctly and back to their current state. They set save points up in one of the missions and passed it to QA to see what wasn't loading back incorrectly so they could debug and fix it. So for those who don't know, they've been using PES as their save state, and so now they're getting to the point where they can use the subsumption tool, which is the mission tool, subsumption missions, the mission tool itself, to save the state once you save it, and when you load back up the game, you still have those missions in place. So you don't have a situation where you're in the middle of a game, you pause it, you save your game, you walk off to go get yourself a sandwich, maybe take care of your child, or deal with something, and then come back and load up the game again, and now your current objective is completely gone, which kind of happens now with Star Citizen, since Squadron 42 and Star Citizen are effectively the same game. This is them fixing that. We're now getting the save time down and saving in the background, so there isn't a long stall each time. Gameplay features team. They also implemented a tutorial feature for the designers. At opportune moments, they'll be able to slow down and pause the game while bringing up instructions for a particular piece of gameplay functionality before continuing when the player achieves what's required. They also set up consoles and data pads to run mobiGlas apps. This allows them to access the same functionality from different places or even create console-specific apps. The new star map was enabled as the radar in the Gladius, which can transition between radar and full-screen modes and power off and on and off. The initial implementation of the new display markers was completed too. Cool. So we're now seeing the star map integrated into the ships rather than being in your mobiGlas, which is interesting concept. Further polish was done on the seamless transition between player camera and cinematic camera based on the cinematics team's feedback. For example, they improved the appearance when the player is moving over standing still. Finally, the team further developed a feature that controls vehicles remotely. They can now constrain vehicles to a given area and ultimately lock them into a given place. That sounds like drone gameplay. Remotely operated vehicles, that sounds like a drone. So that's interesting if we're going to see drone gameplay first show up in Squadron. Features vehicles. The vehicle feature team spent the part of the month enabling newly redesigned quantum travel feature across various chapters in the campaign. It's taken a lot of bug fixing, testing, and iteration to get to the stage, but so far it's been going well, and new quantum travel is set to be enabled in-game wide very shortly. As well as just bug fixing and testing, we've had lots of design feedback from directors, and we've been making iterations to the UI, controls, VFX, and general feel of the vehicle features team. The other major area of focus was the vehicle UI. The team recently received new features from UI Tech that enables them to render 3D UI on the player visor as an AR layer. This led to them building up reticules and aiming and targeting UI in this new tech as they would work towards the vehicle heads-up display that integrates with the new multifunction display MFD systems. So they are doing the MFD and the HUD are going to be integrating into one another. That sounds like more of like a you can manipulate the HUD based off of similar to MFDs. That's something I've been thought for a while, but I guess that may be the case. On a related topic, the underlying MFD tech is complete and the feature is almost usable in game. The team now have the goal of enabling it game wide for the playtests by all devs within the company. Ship radar received further work due to requests made by other teams to support the design work. Most of these came from level design teams and involved mission logic manipulating the radar system to generate gameplay encounters. Lastly, the ship recall feature mentioned in last month's report was fed back on, with vehicle features further iterating on it to improve and polish the gameplay. This involves collaboration with the AI, flight systems, and other feature teams. When complete, the player will be able to use Squadron 42 mobiGlas to call their ship and request it to fly them back. That's very interesting. A lot of interesting stuff there. Gameplay story. Gameplay story concentrated on mocap planning and polish passes last month to further improve their scenes. For example, they updated chapters 1 and 13 by completing thorough passes on characters and reusing animations to make the scenes function correctly. They also created various new scenes by reusing old animations and using new mocap to add others. A significant scene in Chapter 12 received a full pass, with a key character guiding and interacting with the player across the new environment. The team also worked on a scene used if the player is injured and visits a medical bay to be healed. The scene was initially created using wild lines, but it didn't flow as well as hoped, so new animations were produced to make the character interact better with the player. Additional content was also added to allow the player to abandon and rejoin the scene. Cool. We're almost done here. Not even close. Graphics and VFX programming. Last month, the graphics team continued to close out the final tasks for Gen 12, before transitioning to assisting in the completion of the Vulkan graphics API. The damage map system was converted to Gen 12, and support for profile groups was added to achieve parity with profiling tools in the legacy renderer. Additionally, the render pipeline was made configurable to allow secondary viewpoints to balance the desired quality and cost. Finally, legacy lens flares were converted to Gen 12 alongside initial support for HDR. Support for TSAA, that's anti-aliasing, is currently being added to the secondary viewpoints, which will significantly improve visual quality, especially for hair. The team also submitted the first iteration of the new render layer feature to allow easy customization of objects in the world for use with game features such as scanning and the minimap. So people have been asking where they mentioned about hair. They've mentioned about it a lot in this section right here, talking about how they need some specific tools in. For features, the graphics team further developed several shaders, including converting Layer Blend version 1 assets to the more recent version 2 and adding usability improvements to the new shader. Various improvements were also made to the UI shaders, including stability fixes for anti-alias borders, the option to render circles on each vertex, and lighting support to allow planets in the star map to appear both lit and holographic in a single pass. For tools, texture processing was made significantly faster through parallelizing filtering and compression, which will be significant improvement for all the artists and build system. Work started on a new fret mesh format too, with the goal of vastly improving the loading times and the render performance. The VFX programming teams time was split between Fire, Quantum Travel, and Tool work. For Fire, work began on decal shading and achieve glow, burn, and soot on objects within the scene. Quantum Travel has now support for quantum casting and redshift, along with various other code improvements. For Tools, usability improvements continued, and support was added for referencing particle effects from other particle effects. The Planet Tech team worked on better shaping support for asteroid fields, improvements to the harvestable system, and adding the support for instancing to terrain chunks. Now that may sound, wait, are we going to get mining in Squadron 42? We might, but that's not what this is designed for. This is just one of those that is kind of copy-pasted between both Star Citizen and Squadron 42, because they're both basic functionalities for both games, because they're fundamentally the same game, just different scopes. Also, the Planet Tech graphics teams work together on a new water system. This is still an early stage, but aims to allow for GPU wave/ripple simulations at multiple scales, as well as network synced impacts for larger events, e.g. spaceships crashing. Shading improvements are also being made to achieve better reflections, refraction, and foam. Level design, flight. Space/dogfight team, there's a mention right there, continued working to get all of the ship combat sections of the game flowing seamlessly into the social and FPS sections, mentioned there. They also continued working on the various feature teams to get critical systems updates integrated into the game flow. Last month, they further improved quantum travel and pinned targets. Save and load was also worked on alongside the gameplay feature. Level design, social. Last month, Level Design's social team made a concerted push on content across various chapters, including a major focus on background behaviors and schedules for the Idris. This content brings interstitials, a collective tissue that bridges all the scene content to life. This was rolled out to one focus chapter to enable the team to see and evaluate in situ of all the Idris-specific behaviors, including the deck crew, bridge crew, utility, marines, engineers, gunners, medical, leisure, sleeping, sustenance, and hygiene. A large party scene aboard the ship progressed well, too. Interesting. Narrative. A bulk of Narratives Month was spent preparing for an upcoming mocap shoot. This included meeting with various stakeholders to review the content and ensure that the script feel reflects the latest changes, outline any potential lines they'd like to capture, and go through the casting process. The team also planned to use the shoot to start capturing scripts for some of the background characters, codenamed Red Shirts. That's not CIG. Stop. Get some help. Bad. Call them peons or just expendables, whatever. Not red shirts. These characters will utilize dynamic conversation tech along with an array of wild lines to act in a variety of careers. Narrative are also aiming to capture a few of these line sets in every shoot to slowly build up numbers as opposed to scheduling them all in a single shoot. They'll also capture additional combat sets for some of the campaign's enemies. Narrative continues meeting with the design teams to walk through the latest level iterations. This is to assess if any additional content is required to support gameplay, provide guidance, embellish the tone and flavor of the moment, or embellish the tone and flavor of the moment. Otherwise, the team kicked off outlining the various collectibles that will be scattered throughout the game. Now that the types of collectibles have been decided, Narrative can start outlining each one so the props team can start creating assets. People have asked in the past what that means, if that means that CIG is closer to finish. Based off the progress tracker, yes and no. They seem to be a lot closer than they were in the past. It just seems that a lot of Narrative's work has been wrapped up, so they're focusing on other aspects which aren't directly involving them. Though, as you can see, they still have a ton of stuff to do, including fleshing out all the background characters who you don't really know in the game. You're almost done. Tech animation. Last month, the tech animation team, did I remember right? Yeah. We're set at Pinewood Studios in London. Pinewood Studios. Working alongside an outsourced studio to finalize face scanning to populate the remainder of the gene pool for head generation systems, DNA. This is relevant to both the PU and Squadron 42. We scan a broad range of models, young and old, from all facets of humanity available to us, which will go a long way to truly showing diversity in our game. The scanning went exceptionally well. Our chosen outsourced studio has a fantastic resource in their facial scanning rig, which developed exceptional results. Coupled with lots of hard work and a good sense of humor, we made the most of our 2 weeks. Tech animation team. UI. Last month, the UI art and design team worked on reusable signage created in building blocks to make things easier for the environment artists. This means that they can select options from a menu and the sign is automatically generated rather than having to create a unique texture each time. They also continued to concept onto UI styles, ensuring that they are unique and the art direction is well received. They also produced concepts for additional MFD screen layouts and tweaked aiming and targeting alongside the vehicle team. UI continued to iterate on the in-world holographic UIs. As this is the first kind in the game, after reviewing the prototype, we found lots of things to improve, so had another concepting and in-game implementation pass to get to the level we need. UI team. The team made the initial visual pass on the new hacking UI to make it feel more three-dimensional and holographic. UI also supported the Squad 42 feature team in setting up Universal 3D Marker in Star Map, and continue to create UI assets for the cinematics team. So we're going to see UI for the cinematics team, a new marker system that's being implemented with the maps, so very cool. UI Tech created a color picker for us for use in the character customizer. They also continued to help polish the star map, adding space dust to make it easier to perceive movement, improving the controls and creating cubic hollow volumes. They also added workflow fixes too, such as improved comments in building blocks and making it easier to inspect and draw on UIs. And lastly, VFX. Last month, VFX spent time cleaning up data asserts coming from various assets, including particle libraries. This was made easier by the VFX programmers who added more detailed information to the errors, including the path files or missing assets. The team also completed their overhaul of the practice library structure, meaning older VFX can be swapped out for new and improved versions. Finally, the team provided close support to art, design, and cinematics on a variety of locations. So, to summarize, VFX is doing a bunch of stuff. UI is working on new UI styles, as well as additional MFDs and MFD stuff for attaching it to the HUD. We saw the star map is going to have, it can be accessible in the Gladius itself, and it will also have dedicated markers that you can put down. We saw new face systems, new hair, narratives doing a bunch of new work for background characters. We saw that the social team exists a little bit more, that kind of fleshes out more of the Idris-specific behaviors. We saw the creation of the red shirts, the background characters. We've seen flight updates to use the new flight systems, as well as things that help seamlessly add it into each other. We saw Gen 12, obviously. We saw new quantum travel features being added. Background save features being worked on. Engine stuff. Screaming Galsons, and a weird talk about OMC Faction just now getting the work beginning on it. So it could be bad changes, could be actual new work. Then we've got AI healing, using elevators, being able to use new tactics, so on and so forth, plus new information from non-humanoid and birdoid characters, which will be interacted with in Squadron 42. That is the monthly report for February of 2023. If you enjoyed this, make sure you let me know in the comments below if you want me to continue to do this. I only do this if people want me to continue to do these sorts of capsule pullouts and reading these monthly reports. I hope you did find this interesting and gained a little bit more insight. If you're looking for more insight, of course, I did a monthly report last month, which will be up there. And of course, I also did a roadmap update, which had some of those updates as well, which was previous week. 2 weeks ago, actually. And we'll do one in the near future. But until then, I'd love for you to come by and join us on Thursdays at twitch.tv/theastropub and youtube.com/theastropublive. And as always, gotta remember the right one. And as always, hope to see you someday in the black.